On today's podcast, we sit down with the dynamic Jessica Entner, who has navigated both independent and major label worlds. Jessica shares her extraordinary journey from a songwriter to a leading voice in sync at Warner Chappell. We dive into the game of chutes and ladders that helped shape her career, unveil her insights on the emotional power of sync in advertising, and explore her strategies for breaking new artists. This conversation is filled with invaluable lessons for aspiring industry insiders. You won't want to miss it. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, Jessica Entner, a seasoned professional in sync and music publishing. Jessica has navigated her career like a game of chutes and ladders, reflecting on her evolving role from being a songwriter to working with major publishers like Warner Chappell. In this episode, she shares incredible insights into the differences between indie and major publisher sync approaches, the importance of relationships in successful sync placements, and how to navigate the challenges that arise in the fast-paced world of advertising. Discover how iterations and being open to unexpected opportunities can shape your career, and learn about the emotional impact of a sync that goes beyond just financial gain. Jessica also opens up about the biggest misconceptions artists have about the sync industry and the critical importance of timing and relationship building. She even touches on her newly alerted discernment and the value of soft skills in the industry. You won't want to miss this content-packed episode. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Insiders! Are you an aspiring musician, artist, band, or future music business professional looking to take your career to the next level? Well, look no further. At MUBUTV, we offer personalized career counseling and coaching designed specifically for folks like you.
Imagine having both of us by your side, guiding you through every step of your music journey. Our sessions are tailored to meet your unique needs, focusing on critical aspects of your music career, such as refining your songs, defining your artist story, identifying your target audience, and enhancing your social media presence, just to name a few.
Whether you're just starting out or looking to elevate your existing career, we've got you covered. Our comprehensive approach ensures you get insights on everything from live shows to branding and marketing strategies. We understand that every artist is unique. That's why our coaching is personalized just for you.
And here's the best part. We offer flexible coaching packages that fit any budget. Choose from individual sessions ranging from 30 to 90 minutes, or save with our discounted 4-session packages. Experience custom sessions designed to enhance your music career, with opportunities for greater savings when you choose bundled sessions. Investing in your musical journey has never been more accessible.
Imagine the clarity and direction you'll gain after just one session, the feedback on your songs, the strategies to grow your audience, and the confidence to perform live, all tailored just for you.
So why wait? Don't let uncertainty hold you back. Join us for your free 15-minute discovery call at book.mubutv.com for a transformative coaching experience that will elevate your music career. That's book.mubutv.com.
Hi, this is music attorney Alexis Schreiber and Brianna Schwartz of the law firm Schwartz & Schreiber, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is Vice President of Sync at Warner Chappell Music, Jessica Entner. This was a very, very interesting conversation in regards to sync because we really got, I guess, an insight into the journey of someone who has been in this world. And what I loved about this conversation, Eric, was that she went into a lot of the nuances, which I think, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get of understanding what makes the world of sync work. It's not all about finding a place for your music in their world. It works in very, very subtle ways. And I thought one of the most fascinating and important things that Jessica talked about was the navigating of the relationship between advertising and music. She talked about the complexity and the necessary relationship maneuvers between like the creative people and the advertising people, and how those relationships need to be massaged. They need to be developed. It's not just about, here, listen to this.
Right.
And that's what I thought was because that's what makes Jessica so successful. She has worked in that world a long time and understands those aspects of the relationship.
Yeah. And I also thought that one of the other areas, and this one I can speak to just from personal experience, is saying yes to opportunities. Jessica emphasizes the importance of being open to various opportunities, which can lead to unexpected career paths and growth. And one of the examples that I always use is in my own life when I was working at Universal for a while. They had approached me about, they knew I was a musician, and they had approached me about, hey, how would you feel about putting a band together and assembling a band around one of our artists? Now, I never would have thought that I would have been doing that. It was almost like playing the role of the late, great Barry Squire, where I had to put this whole band together and for this artist that's like an internationally known artist. And I just said, you know what, let me say yes. Because initially when I got hired at Universal, I'll never forget, it wasn't in the area that I wanted to be at. I wanted to be on the Anglo side. If you recall, Rich, you and I have talked about this story many times in private. And I was kind of like bummed. I was like, man, I didn't want to be in this part of the business, not because I was ashamed of it or anything, because I'm Latino, but it was just not the area I wanted to be. So I was already kind of like being very resistant to doing it. And I remember my father, of all people, just saying, well, you know what, just stick with it. Just try it out and just see how it goes. And one day led to the next and led to the next. And in that job, so many opportunities had opened up for me. Had I said no, that they would have never happened.
That's right.
Ended up working with the guys from Maroon 5, which we recently had Ryan Dusick on the show, working with Rihanna, Mariah Carey, all these really big acts that were at the time, at some of these events that I was doing, and all of these opportunities. And then again, getting the opportunity of putting those bands together. And then I started to do that on a regular basis, not only for them, but for Sony and acts on Warner. And it was just an interesting thing how it opened up so many doors. So for anybody out there that's listening, please, you need to say yes, even if it's something that you feel like you can't do, because at first you get overwhelmed. Can I actually do this? Well, you got to just put your feet to the fire and try it, because you'll never know what will happen. And so many doors open for me because of that job to this day that it's been incredible.
Absolutely. I think my own career reflects that. I started my career as an intern.
Right.
I mean, I had one job in the music business before that, but that was only for like a week or so. But as an intern at A&M, and that internship led to me being hired at Arista. So like you said, Eric, you never know where the opportunities and where saying yes in life will lead you to, and the opportunities and the things that it will open for you. Definitely.
And with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Jessica Entner.
Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. We're so happy that you're here and really looking forward to this conversation. I want to dive right in. You have referred to your own career path as like a game of chutes and ladders. And I'm curious, what did you learn from your time in music as a performing artist? And looking back, are there any pivotal moments or specific risks that you took that you feel led to where you are today in your sync career?
That is a very good question and a lot of answers to it. I do feel like I've lived quite a few lives when it comes to the music industry, being raised around it and then becoming a songwriter and then working behind the scenes with composers and sync. I've learned a lot. And the one thing that I think is prevalent through all of it is I've never said no to any opportunity that has arisen. I never had like a clear path. Some people have this is what I want to do with my life. This is how I want to get there. These are the steps I think I need to take in order to get there. I never had that. I just as I said, chutes and ladders. It's like, oh, well, let's try this. We'll go down here and see where this goes, because I had an opportunity that came about. And I think when it comes to the music industry, that is kind of how people sometimes fall into it. It's like they start working with a friend who has a band, and now all of a sudden they're a manager, and now they're in the music industry, and now they're an A&R person at a major label. So there's all these different paths and ways to get there. And then there's other people I know who were like, I'm going to get into the music industry. This is my career path. And they've known since they were 15. Mike Caren comes to mind when I think about that. I was the opposite. I just kind of skittered about until I realized I had this extensive career. I honestly, I don't think it's until this decade that I actually appreciated my path and all of the things that I've been able to do within the music industry. I think I've had a really privileged opportunity path for sure.
That's really wonderful, Jessica. This is Eric, and so glad to have you on the show. I wanted to ask you, you've had a career that spanned both the independent and major label worlds. How would you compare the approach to sync between smaller indie companies and a major entity like Warner Chappell? What advantages or challenges have you found in each environment?
Oh, that is a really good question, and I actually have an answer for this. My path was actually more in advertising. I would actually think I keep saying actually, so excuse me, I don't know why. I think my kid's been saying it a lot. I was involved in the advertising side of music. So my first real foray into the business world was with Elias Music. I worked under Jonathan Elias when Elias was probably at the top of their game. They've since been bought by Universal, but we were an original composition music house. Because when I fell into the business, bands weren't looking to license their music to brands because of the sellout factor. And we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't until like the mid 2000s when branding opportunities really presented themselves where people felt comfortable attaching their music to a commercial. So for a long time, it was hey, we really like this song. Can you guys do something similar or has the same tempo? So I worked in that world with composers. That was kind of how I started. And in that world, it's run like a family. It was, the largest company within the music house advertising scene that I worked for was a global music company called Massive Music. And globally, we had maybe 100 people, but within our offices, our US offices, we had under 10. It's very different. You learn how to be a jack of all trades or Jill of all trades, if you will, and multitask and learn on the fly. So I would possibly be working on 5 different projects at a time of various degrees of difficulty. One might be a cover of a known song and we're getting the licensing and the clearance on it and composing a new cover and a new master with whether it's a composer of ours or not. I might also be music supervising a project where I'm pulling music from not only our library, but major labels and whatnot. So I've had to kind of be a Swiss Army knife and, learn how to do billing and, be the one that orders the Costco. And then when you go into a major, I actually equated it to the difference between the public sector and the private sector, right? When you go to a major corporation, there's much more red tape. There's a lot more bureaucracy in some ways that you just don't have the same guardrails in a small company. Like most of the companies I worked for never had an HR department. So that was new. Like, oh, there's an actual dedicated people person. When you work in a small company, titles are they're kind of like, who owns the company and then everyone else is just trying to make it go. So there's a lot more like level set than I think at a corporation. So there's just those types of differences. But on the flip side, I also really like that instead of having to do all the things, I can kind of focus on 2 of the things, which is the first time I've ever had work-life balance, to be honest. So does that answer that question?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely it does. And, reflecting back, it's interesting. In the past, you've mentioned being energized by the creative dialogues that you foster with advertising partners. My question is, how do you approach these conversations? And what do you think is essential in creating a meaningful collaboration between the world of advertising and the music industry?
There's a huge divide. I have learned through the 25 years that I've been in this industry that everyone is really good at what they do, but they don't necessarily know what other people do. And I think for whatever reason, the music industry, I think, believes that everyone understands the components to it. And it's very convoluted. I mean, I go into advertising agencies sometimes and I just start with the basics and I describe what a master is versus what the publishing is. So one of the ways I describe it, and if you don't mind me describing it for some of your listeners,
Absolutely.
is the movie is the script. The script is the song. That's one component. The version of that movie, like the first version of Goonies will always be the first version of Goonies, is the master. That's the master recording of, a known song. So you have these two components to it. A lot of people don't even realize that that's part of the game. And then you throw in the other aspect of, and also there could be 6 songwriters on this one song. And if we don't get approval from that one guy who has 25%, we can't do this deal. So there's a lot of education. I've worked on so many jobs where a company has tried to license a really big song without realizing that that artist might not ever license to commercials, and or it's so far out of their budget they shouldn't even ask. Like situations where you can kind of help guide. And that's always where I've tried to place myself. I've tried to place myself in a way where people can ask me the stupid questions, because none of the questions are stupid. And there's a lot to learn when you marry brands with an artist or a song. You know, there's a lot, or put it in a commercial. You know, there's a lot of different levels to it, and a lot of different people have to sign off on it. And it's a process. And if you're not talking to the right people within that process, the process becomes extra long. Like if you're trying to hire an artist to do something, you know, the conversation you really want to have is with the management. So how do you get to the management? What's the path of least resistance? And that's kind of where I try to place myself so that I can be a solution person for them. And that's how you gain trust, and that's relationship building, so that when there is a bigger project that arises, you can be at the beginning of the conversation. And that's really all it is. I mean, that's business development, right? You're just trying to make the right connections with the right people, have the conversations at the right time, be a solution when you can be a solution, because that's really what people are looking for, especially in advertising. You know, they're dealing with major brands, major client requests, and there's 14,000 chefs in the kitchen, all screaming different things. You know, so right. You have to learn how to navigate that. And I've had friends who are on the film and TV side, which is a avenue I've always actually would have liked to have been in. But I realized that working with clients in the commercial space is such a skill. I mean, I have friends that have been like, I don't even understand their process, because in film, it's very slow, right? You can put a song in a cut of a movie, and that movie doesn't go to market for another year. With ads, you sometimes have 3 weeks to make something happen. Very different.
That's so interesting, Jessica, because, you know, having come from the world of advertising as you have, you know, even in situations where everybody knows, you know, they're aware of song and master and payments and all of that, you brought up something that I did not want to gloss over, which is that there are still, you know, literally sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe more people who are involved in the decision of what music or what song to use. So your skills as a, you know, music person in that particular position become vital, which is, as you pointed out, totally different from film, where it's, you know, a music supervisor and the director. That's the ultimate authority. They don't have to go to 9 different people, you know, involved in, you know, what is the director going to do or not do? And in television, it's kind of similar, where it's, you know, the executive producer. Mm-hmm. But when you get into like the world you're talking about, and that's something that I think people listening to this really need to understand, is, you know, the scope of people and, I guess, cooks in the kitchen, as you put it, that are involved in those decisions. Oh, yeah. I mean, I wish I was kidding. I can tell you a pretty funny story. I can't remember what we were working on, but it was a major client, I think it was an airline. And I was 8 months pregnant, and I get a phone call Saturday night at like 11 o'clock from the producer. And she says, we have to do an emergency session tomorrow. It's Sunday, and I need you to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so now I have to call my creative director. Now I have to make sure that the composer, who is not in LA, is available to do basically like a fly-in, not a fly-in session where he has to fly in, but like lots of conference calls and back and forth and sending and listening and all that stuff. And the whole reason that this got pulled together was because somebody's 12-year-old niece didn't like the song and wanted it to sound more like something else. Yeah. And I swear to God, it was at that moment, because when you're in those situations as a small company, you're like, oh my God, I feel like my client's taking advantage. But listening to the agency deal with their clients, I had so much sympathy for what their day-to-day is, because it really does come down to
they're putting all this creativity into making a marketing plan and a campaign work for a major brand. And the major brand has multiple different levels, but they're in marketing. So they're looking at different things than what a creative would look like. So it's almost like if there's a way to condense the process where people are working together more closely earlier on, and that's the dream, right? You want to get ahead of everything. And in advertising, there really is no way to get ahead of anything when people are constantly changing their mind. And that is really what the biggest roadblock is, I think, when you're working on projects that have a lot of different subjectivity to it, whether it's the color of a commercial, because I've been in those sessions too, where somebody is like, it's too green. And the other person's like, no, it feels too warm. And you're like, oh my God, how did they get anything done? But they do. And it all comes together and it's amazing. But I know people that are still fully immersed in Super Bowl edits. They're still editing. The Super Bowl's in a week. You know what I mean? It's not done. They are dialing it in up until the 11th hour. Absolutely. And I'm not going to lie. I think I like working like that sometimes, because the slower pace of working in one lane in a much larger environment. I'm a doer. So I miss juggling those types of projects. So I kind of do insert myself when I can to have those creative conversations too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of supervisors in film, and they talk about that old creative adage in film. There's the film that's written, there's the film that's shot, and then there's the film that's edited. And they talk about, music supervision, that there's a lot of times when songs are cleared, they're put into the film, they make the film, and then in the final edit, they get cut out. And it's you literally don't know that until I guess you do your final edit. So it is interesting.
I was going to say, I always say, I mean, it's such an old adage too, it's never over until it's over. I always have this thing, unless it is actually on the air, it didn't happen, because you can't know until you see the final cut of anything. And I've had commercials that I've worked on, and then all of a sudden somebody at the last minute probably just threw what was on the temp cut from 10 edit sessions ago. So things like that happen. So you can't count your chickens, because they might not hatch. You just have to wait until you see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very interesting situation to be in. Jessica, in your experience, what are the most significant challenges when trying to pitch new artists for sync placements?
Timing. I think when people are not in the market to be looking, it's very difficult. And in advertising specifically, you don't necessarily know what their production schedules look like for the year, or what they're actually working on, until you just keep hitting them up. And that's the difficulties. My role at Warner Chappell now is interesting, because I'm the first person in this role, which I love, but it's kind of an amalgamation of all different types of skills. I talk to people about creative, I pitch, I also am making new connections for the company, but I'm trying to have these much bigger conversations with people about our back catalog, like Tom Petty, which we just acquired, and David Bowie and Dua Lipa. So that's money, right? Those are big ticket artists. So their songs are going to be a little bit more expensive than, something that nobody's really heard of yet. So there's only a certain level of brands that spend that kind of money. So knowing when they're in the market to look for stuff or break an artist, and that, back to your question about how do you break new artists? I mean, Benson Boone is one of ours. He is unbelievable. I was very lucky to see him perform several times this year, and I'm not going to lie, I turned into a 13-year-old teeny bopper. I think he's so good. He's so good. He does backflips. He's super cute. He's got a great voice. He's an amazing songwriter. But been able to, I know he had a deal with Hollister, but had we been able to go out and pitch actively to these bigger brands and say, hey, this kid, we know they're putting a ton of money behind him. Here's where he came from. Here's where we think he's going to go. If you can have those conversations 6 months ahead with a major brand so that they can pack that into their creative, that's ideal. That's the kind of conversations I want to have. So I can start going, hey, here's this new artist nobody really knows yet. I'm giving you an opportunity to work with this artist before they even are released. Those are the types of things I want to work on. Getting in front of the right people at the right time is the most difficult thing.
Let me ask you, Jessica, and this is another subset of the question that we were just talking about, because you mentioned a couple of things there about when the advertisers, when they're in the market for looking for things. And I don't think we've ever asked this question on the show. Is it seasonal? I know it sounds like an odd question, but like, does it go through ebbs and flows? And is there particular times of the year where you're getting more, hits than others in terms of, connecting artists?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think we've ever spoken about that.
No, it's interesting because with advertising, for sure, there are seasons, right? It's like one season to the next. So obviously we are a week out from the Super Bowl, huge season. We start getting requests trickling in maybe November, October, right before they go to shoot, where people are trying to figure out what their costs are going to be. So we'll get hit up about, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Do you know how much that would cost? And then we're just giving quotes. And this is across the board in music. Like if I'm working at an original composition house, we might be getting those phone calls too. Like, hey, we're thinking about doing 5 different songs on, 18 different pieces of content. So you kind of have to work through what your costs are going to be. So that's kind of the entry phase where you start to see people asking questions. For me, that's a signal, oh, people are looking. I'm going to hit up the people I know, say, hey, if you're looking, we've got this. So I know in essence, that's what the process is going to be. So I try to get ahead of it in that way. But we are now, the last week, we closed like 8 licenses this week alone that were last minute. So it starts to pick up in like November, and then January is just nuts. December, we get a lot of music requests. That's when people are like, send us everything you've got. And that's like the music request month. And then January is the like firming the details up. Another big season is back to school. That's when a lot of the huge campaigns come out. The holidays,
right?
Christmas, New Year. So it's funny. You see this kind of seasonal ebb and flow, but I would say the quietest season in advertising might be like June through August, when all the award shows are taking place. So there is a little bit of like a breathing space, but there's definitely, and then of course there's car season, right? End of the year.
Right. You
have car season launches. So you kind of do start to see like, okay, I need to be here and I need to be here for this. Not that dissimilar to, TV and like pilot season or when they get their production slate. And I will say that's what's so interesting to me. I wish we had what TV and film get. Like you'll get from the major studios a roster of what they're going to release this year and where to focus. So if you work in music, I need to reach out to this music supervisor because we have a bunch of 1960s funk. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But with advertising, you're like, you get briefs and they're like, we want something that's like poppy, electronic, but with no synth. And you're like, cool. And so that's all you're focusing on. And then they realize that doesn't work. And then they come back to you and ask for a hip hop track. So the ball is constantly moving. But in film, I feel like, for a fact that Yellow Jackets is going to have a soundtrack that is 90s. So you're going to send that music supervisor stuff that would fit in that era. Like it's just a free for all a little bit in advertising.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to sort of not sidestep, but I want to address another aspect of what we're talking about in this conversation. I've read previous interviews and conversations with you where you have highlighted the importance of emotion in sync, particularly with new artists. And I'm wondering, can you elaborate on how you assess the emotional power of a track and its potential impact in different media contexts?
That's a broad and very specific question at the same time. I'm going to start backwards. I think within different media, you have different goals, right? So if you're doing a social media campaign, you know that you only have about 6 seconds of somebody's attention. So you're going to make something pop. You're going to make it bright. You're going to want to, and this is actually a space where they are comfortable working with emerging artists because there's a lot less to lose and the spend isn't as big, right? So you have to kind of look at all the proponents of this. Broadcast, film, TV, trailers, promos, those are going to be your bigger ticket items where people are willing to spend 6 figures on a track. So a lot of the times you'll see, especially in the Super Bowl, known songs that you have heard on the radio or by huge artists. But when you get into the social media aspect, that song might not be used, right? Because this is an area where they don't need to spend that money. So they can pick another emerging artist that might sound similar, or they want to help bring to light. And I love it when brands do highlight the emerging talent, because not all of them do. But that's kind of the difference, right? You're going to use your smaller, like lesser known artists and try to help break them, because we all know now social media is really where the charts are coming from. I mean, it's crazy, but it's true. I listen to what my kids, what he finds on the internet and songs, and they're inane, but they are, all the kids know them, and it's nuts. So, I was scrolling earlier and he said, "Oh, that's on a Fortnite. That's in Fortnite. Oh, that's in," and I'm like, wow. So they're kind of commingling a lot of these gaming songs with the TikTok and the Instagram stuff. Just so you know, he is not on social media, and super, super strict about that. But he hears, he will watch stuff on my phone or whatnot. And then for me, because I was an artist, because I know how hard it is to be an artist, because right now it is so difficult to break through all the noise. I mean, I can't keep up. And there's artists at all different levels that, they're now being presented to us based on our algorithms. I mean, that's it. You are being exposed to artists they think you'll like on Spotify. And a lot of the times I find artists that way, and I love that. But it's getting harder and harder to tour. People aren't going out like they used to, not in the small club type of way. You have to really be a music lover, I mean, I've seen so many artists in small clubs and been shocked at how much space there is. It's almost like the diehard music people go to see shows. And I do think people are out again, but I think it's for like major ticket artists. I think the days of going to the Roxy on a Thursday night just to see who's playing, like that doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? The music, I guess the bottom line is music discovery is completely different. And so I think brands are attracted to working with artists that they can share the reach with, right? That's why you see brands collaborating with huge artists. It's for the combined reach. What I would love to see more of, because I don't think it happens, and I was just in Sundance and it was interesting, they did have a panel about this. And the reality is brands are the benefactors to the arts. They really are. They have the money. When you see brands like American Express does it, I know Adobe does it, when they are investing in filmmakers and artists and music, it makes a difference, because it is very difficult to get things made and out and seen. It's just a very difficult process. And so I would love it if advertisers and agencies and brands had a bigger relationship where we could share information. Like, here's what our goals look like for this year. Who are you releasing? Who is your priority? So that we can match them up appropriately. That would be so awesome. I don't know how to make that happen, but that's like my goal. That is like, if I can do anything within my business and make some change, that's where I would want to make the change. I would love to have shared information within the like launching aspect of a brand and an artist and all of that.
Indeed. Jessica, given your extensive experience working with songwriters and catalogs, what are some of the most common misconceptions that new artists or emerging songwriters have about the sync industry, and how do you help them navigate those misconceptions?
I don't even know if this pertains to just new artists. I think in general, artists don't understand the process of how it works, right? They're like, oh, can't you just call somebody up and tell them that this song will be great for this brand, or this song would be great in this scene? And the reality is I would love to be able to do that. But for advertising, it's very, very difficult. There's a fine line between pitching creative ideas, right? And there's just so much out there. It really is timing and relationships, right? I know I'm going to listen when I have my own company as a music supervision, original composition producer. There were people that I knew when they sent me music, I'm going to listen to all of it because it's going to be great. And I know that they know exactly what I was asking for. And then there were times I would get a couple tracks from, a small publisher, and it's just stuff they're pushing, but completely off the mark. That's like, I'm not going to listen to their stuff first anymore. So it's also that relationship of trust, right? If you're trying to break a new artist, you're kind of only going to be able to break somebody through somebody who has a good relationship with the end result. And does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to say, without the one, there's not the other. Yeah. So.
Right. I mean, you could be the best artist in the world, but if you keep sending me really obnoxious emails and you sent me the wrong song or you're annoying, it's going to be difficult for me to want to work with that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's all in presentation, and it does matter. You know, I love when I get emails from people who are genuine and you can tell it's not a copy and paste, and there's some, I mean, that's my whole thing too. It's like, if you're going to connect with somebody, you need to connect with them.
Right.
Like, send a personal email. If you are a fan of this person's work and you have been writing songs for 10 years and there was a scene that really spoke to you, so you wrote a song about it, whatever it is, something personal is going to make me open that email and listen to that song. A blanket, hey, I'm a singer-songwriter and here's my stuff. It would be great for your film. Like, okay, cool, thanks. Like, you know, and I hate to say that because I know how much it took for that person to send that email. But like, give me something. Give me a reason to open it, you know?
Yeah, no, precisely. You cannot be generic in that. It can't all be about, you know, listen to my music.
Yeah, find a place for my song.
Find a place for my song in your world. The world doesn't work like that. I mean, I don't need to tell you that, Jessica. The world doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And you have to approach it with care and thoughtfulness and be vulnerable and be genuine. And, you know, just in general, I think there's so much formality in business that we have created this illusion of a certain aspect of, you know, greatness. But like, I'm just a goofy music lover who likes to talk to people. That's really what my gig is. Like, that's who I am as a person. So if somebody sends me an email where I feel like I have that bond with them through that, they're, hey, I really love, I was Googling you and I saw this and, you know, I just wanted to get this in front of you and just hear what you thought. I'm going to respond or be open to something like that because you approached me in the way that I approach people, as opposed to something that's super formal where I'm like, this just feels like weird. Like, this feels like I'm one of 400 people that got this email.
Hey, insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured conversation. Stay tuned because we've got so much value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Eric, as an artist, what do you find are the most challenging aspects to a music career, especially when you're starting out?
Well, I think one of the first things is just trying to get the direction of who you are as an artist, where you want to go, where you want to be. And, you know, we've talked about it on the show a lot. Who is your target audience? Who you are? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you think would resonate with an audience? And so those are some of the things that I would feel being a new artist. Obviously, what I know now is different because I know these things, but for people that are out there like our audience that don't have necessarily any direction to go would be the first things that I would start off with.
And having the songs that
Absolutely.
incorporate those elements that you're speaking of into it. That's so important today.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we started MUBUTV and why we started this new consulting service that we're offering to all of our insiders out there, because that is another one of the big things. I mean, that is the big thing, is like having the great songs. That's what it really starts off. Our friend Don Grierson always said, it always starts with a great song. So that's probably, besides putting together what your audience and what your target audience is the single most important thing. Where are your songs at currently today? Are you collaborating with people? Are you trying to go out to networking events where you can connect with other songwriters and stuff like that? So
yeah, and what are your strengths?
Exactly.
You know, are you a strong lyric writer? Are you a strong melody writer? Are you a strong musician, a player?
Right.
You know, and it's really important to get really strong clarity on those issues before proceeding.
I totally agree, Rich. And, you know, with our consulting services, we offer a myriad of different packages and we've made it super affordable for everybody. So, you know, if you guys are interested out there in connecting with us on a coaching call, you can visit book.mubutv.com and start off with a free 15-minute discovery call.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There we start with an initial 15-minute call where we can get a sense of who you are, what are the issues that you specifically have, and want to work on.
Exactly.
And we can go from there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we tailor everything to your needs. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. We kind of really want to get to know who you are as an artist, where you at today, what's the snapshot of you as an artist today, and then start trying to craft something that's tailor-made for you. So again, if you're interested, visit us at book.mubutv.com for your 15-minute discovery call.
Jessica, I've heard you speak before about the importance of being proactive rather than reactive in sync. How do you identify and create those opportunities before they become obvious to others in the industry?
That's an interesting question. I just had an experience recently where I had met a couple people that worked for a major brand, and I was like, oh, it would be really cool if we could do something together. I'm like, what if we did this? And I was describing one of our songs and mentioned that it might tie in very nicely with one of their products. And they're like, yes, let's talk about that. I'm like, it doesn't have to be that, but just something like that. It's very hard to do that. And so I don't go around doing that often, but when I have the opportunity to, that's the proactive approach. It's like planting the seed, letting somebody know that this is available. This is something that we could possibly collaborate with. This is something that we know is interesting to the artist or the estate. So for us, that's not been the normal practice. When I've worked for smaller companies, it has, because we've had to be scrappy and kind of get in front of people and give them some ideas. But this is a newer way to work with our catalog, because for a very long time, we get all the briefs, right? We're a major company. We have so much content. We get all the briefs. So we're seeing the work. It's not like we're not seeing it, but we're not going out and putting ourselves in front of it. And that's the difference. That's the kind of approach that I've become used to in my career. And that's what I'm trying to kind of bring to the table in my new role.
Jessica, success in sync is often about relationships. And you touched on this. We've touched on it a little bit in the conversation. How do you and your team build and nurture long-term relationships with clients, especially in industries like gaming, which require slower, more methodical negotiations?
It's interesting because it's twofold, right? We have quite a few people on our team that are involved in that process. So you have the person who is a dedicated pitch person who's pitching all the music, and then you've got our clearance side. Both of those relationships are extremely important, right? One's talking creative, one's talking money. Everything that we do in life. I mean, I make jokes, but it's true. Like everything in life, no matter what it is that you do, it's sales and production. And production meaning execution, right? Sales and execution. Ideas, execution. You have to continually have conversations with people so that they trust you, so that they trust your taste when it comes to music supervision, so that they trust your ability to clear things and negotiate on their behalf. Everything is relationship based. I guess that's kind of the answer to that. I don't know if I missed that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I want to back up on something that you said early in our conversation, which I thought was really interesting. And that is that, it seems like the one thing that really stands out in your career is your ability to say yes to new things. And, when you talked about that early on, I was just curious, what's the most unexpected lesson that you've learned from saying yes to an unfamiliar opportunity? And how has that shaped your perspective on sync and music publishing?
Okay. It might not have shaped my relationship with sync and music publishing, but I think I have definitely said yes to things before really, like in my younger years, really evaluating if that was the right fit for me. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like,
yeah.
I think it's twofold. And of course, as you get older and wiser and you've worked in different situations, you kind of know what to look for or what you think you will flourish in, but not every opportunity is equal, right? It might get you to the next level,
right?
But it might be such a terrible fit that it's painful, right? I feel like that is probably the biggest lesson I've learned, because I'm that person. I'm up for anything, right? I love adventure. I didn't have very high expectations for myself. I found out about 5 years ago through having a child that I have ADHD, which is super fun. But my whole life made sense after that. I'm like, oh, this is why I do all the things. This is why I can't sit still. This is why I'm easily distracted, but also super hyper focused. I mean, it's this kind of nutty thing, and it's worked for me. But when I started out, I was just happy that somebody wanted to hire me. You know what I mean? I came from like, oh, I'm so lucky to have a job. And I think as I've gotten older and more developed in my skills, and I understand the industry that I'm in a lot more, and I've gained so much experience, I now want to be in places where I know not only am I the right fit, but I can make a difference. You know, that's where my views have changed, where I don't say yes to every opportunity now. I did for a long time, and it suited me for a long time. But as you get older and you realize your worth, opportunities are to be evaluated. When you're young, say yes to everything. That's how you learn. When you're older, not every opportunity is equal to the next.
Yeah, it's like you learn discernment.
Discernment. That's exactly, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
You learn discernment. That's what you're saying, is that you learn that not every opportunity is equal, but you learn to be discerning. You learn that, these 5 things, but no, this is the one that's going to suit me here and now. And it's like, it's like anything, it's like relationships and just views on different aspects of it.
Yeah.
They are not the same in your 20s as they are in your 40s. They're just not. Nobody I know of looks at those situations in the same way, depending on the station of life you're at. Absolutely.
Totally. And I also think, there is something to be said about coming up with people. Like, I feel like my point of entry into the world of advertising, because I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever worked outside of when I was younger and I worked at Maverick as an intern. This is the first time I've worked in the actual music industry. I always felt like I was adjacent, and it felt more that I was in the advertising industry because those were the people I was involved with. And so when I started in this business, I was about 26, and I have risen up with all of these amazing people who are now the CCOs of major agencies, or are now the VP of brand at a major soft drink company. And so when you are able to start at a level and kind of stick to it, because I've worked in advertising, but in different iterations. I've worked in production, music, I've done repping, I've done all these different types of things within that world. But seeing all my friends come up, and then we're all up at this, we've hit kind of the top floors together. It's amazing. And that's where your relationships are. It's with the people you met in your 20s, who you would go and have drinks with after work. I didn't realize that I was actively networking, right? You don't think about that. But when you get older, you're like, wow, I have a huge network because I went to this school and this summer camp, and, I worked with this person at this company. And those things start to take shape, I think, when you're a little wiser. I mean, some people are very good at this at a young age, but I just kind of let things happen naturally. And now I realize, wow, I know some pretty awesome, important people, but just by happenstance, just because I hung out with them when I was in my 20s.
And it came full circle for you. So I guess what helped you in your 20s, being so open, got you to the point of the discernment now and realizing what you have with your network of people. So very good.
Totally.
Yeah. Jessica, has the global nature of streaming today impacted what music is synced?
It's interesting. I think there's a huge influx of Latin influence in music now, where people and Afrobeats, people are super into that right now. So you're seeing that more on a global stage than you had in the past. I also think there's this huge range of nostalgia that is global. So you see a lot of things from the 90s globally. I work again mostly in advertising, but I know just from my film and TV partners, seeing what's coming across their desk. It's very much a mix of those things that you're seeing heightened in the last couple of years, for sure.
Looking back at your best syncs, your most proudest syncs, how do you measure success beyond just the immediate financial gain for you personally?
I think the reaction of the public. I worked on a project for NFL and Milk where we created bespoke rap for Juju Smith-Schuster, right? I think he's a Steeler. I don't know. I'm a terrible football person. And it hit 10 billion views in a week. And as we were watching this climb, It was my first huge job out of the gate when I started my own company. So I ran the whole thing by myself. I creative directed it. Everything went smoothly. The winning production was done by this, and this talk about timing, this female producer out of Atlanta. And she had hit me a week before and she sent me the kindest email, and I listened to her stuff and I said, I definitely will keep you posted. I have something coming up. And she won this huge spot. And I was so like, forget the financial aspect for me. I love writing checks for other people. I love that. It made me so happy to connect with this woman, and within 2 weeks she nailed something and I got to write her a nice big check. Like that is success.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And my next question is, what role does the cultural and emotional impact of a sync have on its lasting value? You touched on that when you were talking about some of the syncs of the 90s and so forth. So what role does the cultural and emotional impact have on its lasting value to you?
Well, it's interesting, right? I mean, I grew up in an era where we were still listening to the radio and writing down lyrics. Like that was how,
right.
It's like, that was or MTV, where it wasn't about syncs. You got to see these artists. And I mean, I was very much part of the MTV generation. I call it that because I was too young to experience what was happening on screen, but watching it unfold, going, that's what being a teenager looks like, or that's what, a rock and roller looks like, or whatever. That was a weird thing to say. But anyway, I think nowadays you see it in film and TV, like, of course, I'm going to use the reference that everyone knows and loves, but Stranger Things. I mean, when you see the I want to say backdraft, that's not the right word, but like the reach and the impact, that's what I'm trying to
impact, yeah.
The impact of pairing a perfect song to a visual, it does last because it gets referenced over and over. I mean, I had never seen 6 Feet Under, but I sure as hell knew that the usage of Sia's Breathe Me was epic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And everybody said that. And so I watched it just to get to the end. I mean, what a great series. And the irony is I watched it as an adult, and it came out when I was about Lauren Ambrose's age. But had I watched it when I was her age, I would have had a completely different experience. And that show was like, I'm watching it as a parent and I'm like, oh yeah, this is all like, it's such a great show. But that usage was like on the nose. And so when you can create moments like that, or help people create moments, or lead them to those moments, because a lot of the time what we do as a publisher or a label, we're just we're just leading them to what's available. Right here, you can use this. And we have to cross our fingers that they get it, teaching you this because this will work,
Absolutely. And in the Sia situation, I mean, that was very unique in a placement and in its impact. And I think one of the things that made it have the power was not only the show, which goes without saying, but it was highly unusual for a sync placement to have 6 minutes of time on the screen. That's very, very unusual.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Very. I mean, they synced the whole song. It wasn't a portion. And absolutely. And I think that's, I'll be honest, I think that's what broke Sia for the people that didn't know her. I mean, prior to that, I was a huge 07 fan, so I'd been listening to Sia and was aware of her way before 6 Feet Under. But that show and that usage put her on the map.
Yeah.
Another one I can think of is one of the first major syncs that I was adjacent to. I didn't do it, but I was working as one of the music supervisors on the project. The Mitsubishi sync for telepop music, the Just Breathe.
Oh yeah.
That was one of the first major bands that I remember having a huge extra success by syncing to an advertisement. They used, I think Mitsubishi at that time was very much wanting to use, because they were with Deutsche at that time, they were wanting to use known songs that they could help rate. So you could see that. And they were picking really interesting songs that worked, but also had such a reach that like made people go out and go, who is that? Let me go listen. Oh, they have an album,
No, absolutely. Another one that comes to mind that I forget who we were talking to. It was somebody many years ago on the show, and we were talking, and they used the reference of Feist. And the song that the Apple Spot, 1,
right.
2, 3,
Right.
4.
1, 2.
Yes.
Perfect.
And they said, and they pointed something out, which was really interesting. They said, I think that the total bill on that for Apple was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $75,000-$80,000. They said, which was a nice sum of money. But they said the impact, the great part about the impact was that what they saw was not only in the song, but the fact, and he got this directly from the manager, was that Feist at that time was doing 2,000 to 3,000 seats a night when that came out, okay?
Right.
And that immediately after that is, the $40 million campaign that was put on that particular ad campaign nationally on television. She went to 5,000 to 7,000 seat amphitheaters. Literally from that. So the artist development aspect,
and the deeper thing about that track is that it became ubiquitous with the product. So it went even deeper, than that. Yes. So it was like the triple whammy.
Absolutely, yes. And again, we're talking a different era, but that's one that we haven't spoken yet in terms of, there are the cultural impacts, but here's one that was directly related to artist development aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is lightning in a bottle, right? You really want those things to happen. That's the goal. How do you make those things happen? And they have to happen organically. You have to have trust. Also, the brands have to be willing. I don't think they realized how big it was going to be, or maybe they did, or they were hopeful, but you never really know. You really don't until you put it out in the world and see how people respond to it. But that song at that time, it was also early in the game when Apple was, I think, was that an iPod commercial? I think it was an iPod.
Yeah, I think it was.
I believe,
yeah.
And they broke a lot of bands. Yeah, they broke a lot of U2, which didn't need to be broken, but that took them to a new audience in a new world. And then obviously they had the collapse after that when they included that song on everybody's thing, which was it went from one extreme to the other. They had this tremendous success with Vertigo and setting up that, album. And then they came with that other one after. So just, it was very interesting. Yeah. Apple has been, they are probably, when people talk about advertising and impact, I think that's one of the case studies. Apple is on a different level. You know that they're going to spend money. You know that they're going to partner with the right people. You know what they put out is going to be interesting. And they've done a great job at branding their brand, right? Their brand is a brand. Right.
It's like it's its own entity in itself. Like the way that they market to people is its own thing. And they have a corner market on that. I would love to see more brands take risks like that. But again, it's so subjective. Like, I don't know what the process was for that song. I don't know if that was a late addition or the first song that they paired with it. Like, I don't remember the commercial in my head well enough, but in most instances, somebody might send out a brief saying, hey, can you send me songs about counting? Like, that's what the brief could have been.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that song just happened to be perfect. And, getting from point A to point B when it comes to music, you can't. There's no straight line. There's absolutely no straight line, because it's almost like you have to hear it and see it and feel it in order to understand it. But you also know exactly when it's not working. Being sure is the hard part.
Exactly. Jessica, what do you feel holds artists back from success in their own careers?
Not realizing that the industry is more than just music. That's something I wish I had known. When I was a songwriter, I never owned it. When I was an actress going to school, I never owned it. You got to own it. And you also really, and I used to hate it when my acting teacher would say this to me, like, if you can see yourself doing anything else, then, go do that. And the reality is I could, because I can see myself doing everything. Like, I'm like, oh, I'll do that, but
right.
You have to love it. For me as a songwriter, I wanted to be a songwriter artist, but I also didn't want to be famous. You have to want it. You have to want it. You have to eat, sleep, pray, love, meet people, put yourself in situations where you're talking to the right people or are not being annoying. You have to align yourself with partners who can lift you up and create new stuff with you. I'm working with a band right now. One of the the lead singer, or it's a duo. The guy I've been friends with for 20 years, and I've seen different iterations of his music. This by far is my favorite iteration, anything I've seen him do. And I'm all in, right? I'm so excited for what's to come with them. But that's because he's done it for so long. He's made all the contacts, and then he tried this new thing, and it just works really well. So don't be scared to try new things. Don't be scared to partner with people. Don't be scared to try a different style. Like, if you love what you do and you want to make music, you just have to be open, and you have to work in every capacity. You have to be your own biggest cheerleader. You have to put yourself out there. You have to own it and not be scared. I think that's the biggest roadblock for most of us, right? Fear. People will say no, and they're not going to be nice about it. Yeah. And if you ask for someone's opinion, just be ready for them to give it to you. And I think that's the other thing. You can't be precious. I get it. It's your art. It's your baby, but you can't be precious. And some people are going to say things that are completely wrong and untrue. We've seen that happen where you see like somebody at a studio passed on a movie and then it went on to win an Oscar, or somebody passed on a song and it was a huge hit for somebody else. It happens.
Yes.
It's part of life.
That's right.
It happens. You know,
yes.
Somebody keep doing it, keep knocking on the doors. If you believe in it and if it's that good, somebody will take notice. Timing is everything.
Yeah, but it has to start with you.
Yep.
I want to ask you, Jessica, throughout your life, have there been any books or films that you have found to be particularly inspiring, professionally speaking? Well,
it's funny you say that. I don't tend to read a lot of professional books. I read a lot of novels. I'm a novel reader. I like stories. I like, big, sweeping, long stories. So I'm currently reading The Covenant of Water. One of my favorite books is Shantaram. Nothing has to do with anything, but I like to experience the world through other people's eyes. So I love those types of stories. I love stories about faraway places. I think music business wise, I've been lucky to have a real life book in front of me with my dad and his career. So I hate to say this, but like I grew up thinking I knew everything about the music industry because I had been inside of it as a child. So I never really like read any books. The one book that I did find very inspiring, just as an artist, as somebody who I thought was just a delightful read, was the Dave Grohl book. And Patti Smith. Oh, Patti Smith's book, The Just Kids. That was extremely inspiring because it's all about art. It's all about it's a love letter to Robert Mapplethorpe, and it's one of the most amazing time capsules, like Gramercy Park, Chelsea area in the 70s and 80s. I mean, if you haven't read it, it's a good one. Inspiring just to get through it.
Yeah, it just dawned on me, and I didn't realize. So your father's Warren Entner, I'm assuming.
That indeed is my dad.
Okay, I just realized when you mentioned your father, I was just like, wait a minute, I didn't realize it. I said, wait a minute, her dad's Warren Entner. Interesting.
I know. So my upbringing was weird.
Yeah, no, interesting. That is so amazing to know. I wanted to ask you, Jessica, your career has seen you transition from being signed as a songwriter in 2002 to now being in a leadership role at Warner Chappell Music. What advice would you give to those who aspire to have a successful career in sync, and how can they best prepare for that?
Know the players. I think that is probably the best advice I can give to anybody who is a coordinator or is just kind of getting into the business. Know the players, ask questions. No question is stupid. We all love music, but definitely I think people have strengths. Like, I'm a neo soul lover. That's my world. I know artists in that world. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so that's a good area of expertise for me. Find an area of expertise. Even if your expertise is broad, find a lane within the music that you're like, I know about this style very well. I think it's helpful. I think when you're too broad, people don't necessarily, it's not always right. Does that make sense? Like when you're too broad and you like I like everything. Well, that's great. But where's your passion lie? Like when you're alone, what do you listen to? What do you seek out? I think I know a lot of people that got into the music industry later in life and have thrived. you're never too old to become a coordinator. You know what I mean? I know people that are like, I need a change. I want to pivot. They're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they go and find an internship. Like, any entry point is an entry point, and you will learn something along the way. And think particularly, everybody has that idea that, oh, I can be a music supervisor, or, oh, I have a really good ear for music, and I can, this is how I would do that. That's great. But a lot of the stuff that music supervisors or sync people tend to deal with, a lot of it is in the negotiations and the financial aspect. It's not always creative, right? Sometimes the director comes in and is like, these are the songs I want. Go get them.
Yeah,
and now you got to make that happen.
It's in your people skills.
Right. Exactly. And so, and it's funny, I do see people that can just put their head down and they don't want to socialize and they don't want to network and they just want to do the job that's at hand. And there's a place for that. But if you are in sync, it's all of those things. You have to keep making contacts. These are your clients. These are new people to work with. You can't be shy. It's honestly, it's like you do have to talk to a lot of people. So people skills are very important. The soft skills, honestly, if I could tell anybody anything, I don't care what industry you're in, soft skills are the most important skills. They just are. Somebody else can be super organized, or somebody can, put templates together. That's great. That's a really good skill too. But just being able to talk to people, connect with people, and come up with ideas and be creative. Those are soft skills that I think we are slowly valuing more, but those are skills that will get you far in life, no matter what you do.
I could not agree with you more. I've been in the business, Jessica, for 47 years this year. And,
congrats.
I just want to say, what you just said is so profoundly important for our listeners to hear, especially people coming up in the business, because there are so many people who, as you just pointed out, can do the job, or, they have certain skills, but they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to build relationships. They don't know how to call somebody up and say, Jessica, it's been a while. We should get together for dinner.
Totally.
They don't know how to build on what is going to be so important. And as you know, this is a relationship business. The whole industry is relationship business. I mean, and some people, you remember who John Kolodner was, right?
I know that name, but I can't.
He was the head of A&R for Geffen Records.
Oh, yes.
Right,
oh, my God.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we interviewed him, and he told this great story about relationship where he said, sometimes the point that we're talking about goes as far as he said he wanted to sign Ozzy Osbourne. And he really wanted to do it at the time when Ozzy was available. And David Geffen, who's one of the smartest, shrewdest, toughest businessmen in the industry, legendary, said, absolutely not. I will not do business with Don Arden, the manager at that time. He just wouldn't. Like, that was more important than money, success, and even to somebody at that level, where David Geffen said, no. And, and I worked for Clive Davis for many, many years at Arista, and he had the same view. When you talk to people who are at that level, you realize it's not all dollars and cents. There are some things that just aren't worth the money. They're not worth the aggravation or the time and the energy that they're going to take. So I just wanted to comment that it's such an important point you made, and people need to do it. Yeah. Very
and
much so.
on your way up, be a good person, be kind to everyone, respond to emails. It always baffles me that I can get like the CCO of an agency to email me back within 5 minutes, but like the associate producer that I emailed just ignores my emails.
Right.
Like that, I don't care if you're not interested, just a response.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're not looking right now. It's good manners.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny that you talk about this, because me and Rich have had conversations, I mean, like magnum opuses that we have talked about the whole consciousness of today, because of course we're getting bombarded from every shape, way, and form.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can't respond back to an email for the first time, the second, third, fourth, we're in a fifth email, and send us to hell. Tell us something.
Right.
I would rather hear something than just nothing. And it goes to a deeper point of what's going on in today's world. And so it's interesting that you're bringing that up. That
is a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But yes, 100%. And I do I do think that is taught, and I do think it's very important. Anytime I do talk to younger people getting into the biz, because I love mentoring people. I've had such a strange road trip to get here. I do feel with this role, like when they approached me about it, I told my husband, and he goes, "Oh my God, this is the job you've been training for your whole life." And I'm like, totally, I know how to do this. And it feels great, but that I want to give back. So anytime somebody emails me or wants to have a quick Zoom and I have time, I do. It's important. It's important. It's great that if this person goes on somewhere, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know Jessica Entner. She talked to me first." And then you never know where someone's going to go. You never know where they're going to be. Don't be an asshole. Like, that's like how else to say it. Like, bottom line, like, if you just use that as your motto, you'll be fine. Absolutely. And I think, honestly, I learned that from my dad. And I will say, I did have a crash course in networking, and I didn't even realize it. And I wish I was paying attention, to be honest. But my dad used to take me to events with him. For whatever reason, people would think I was his wife. I shouldn't say for whatever reason. I was, it was really weird. It was really funny. He liked it much more than I did when that was said. But we would go out and he would say, and also pay attention when you're out. Like, pay attention to whoever you're with. Work with the person you're with. And my dad taught me that. And he said, if I introduce you, that means I don't know their name. So please introduce yourself and ask them to say their name again.
That's a great.
I learned this little trick, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So sorry, I don't know. If
it's okay.
I have a potty mouth.
It's all right.
Terrible.
We can curse here.
Also blame my dad for that. No, purely my mother. But he would do that, and I'm like 16 years old at Grammy parties meeting, John Colomners and not Clive Davis, but I'm trying to think of Polly Anthony's, and my dad's introducing me to these people. So I had this kind of front row seat into how he worked a room. And it wasn't like he worked. My dad's also a very gregarious, great person. And I love that now as an adult, when I meet people who do know my dad, the first thing out of their mouth is, "Man, your dad was one of the good ones."
Yeah.
He gave me my first break. Having someone say that about you, that's success.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
And that's why I picked up that it was your dad, because I go, he's legendary. I mean, so I was like, oh my God, this is Warren Entner's daughter. I was like, holy crap.
You should have him on.
Yeah, we would love to. Yeah, we would love to.
Yes.
He's legendary. Yeah.
Not to plug my own podcast, but I do have a podcast with a friend from high school, and my dad has 2 episodes.
Oh, great.
And
wonderful. Yeah, we'll
please
put it
share
in.
it. Share what's the name of the show? What's it about?
The name of the show is called 90210. I graduated from Beverly Hills High, as did my co-host, and we've been friends since I was 15. And so actually during a lunch with my dad and my friend Dan, this came up in conversation. He's like, "Hey, would you ever want to do this? My friend has already got this website up and he's been telling me to do this idea." The whole podcast kind of started with people that grew up in LA, in and around celebrity, whether it was their brother or sister or mom or dad. My dad went to Fairfax High School, so he has stories about Phil Spector and Jim Morrison because he went to UCLA Film School. So he has 1960s. Then he was in the grassroots because he was in a band, and then he managed all these bands. So we had a 2-episoder where he just told story after story, and it's great. And we also had Angelina Jolie's brother, James Haven, on, Bobby Jacoby, who you will absolutely recognize because he's been in every 80s movie or TV show you've ever seen as a child actor. We had Tara Reid's brother on. Who did we have? Oh, we had Epic Mazer from Crazy Town.
Oh, nice.
We had Charlie Paulson from Goldfinger, who's an old friend of mine. So we've just been talking to people that grew up in and around LA and their growth and where they came from and how they got to where they are. John Weinbach, I went to high school with. His episode was great. He was the executive producer on Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary. So he's produced all of those. So it's been really fun because I'm connecting with people that I grew up with, but also meeting new people that Dan knows who have had these crazy LA stories. And it really is a cross between what it was like to grow up in this world with a famous sibling or father or whatnot, but also what are you doing now? How are you dealing with that? How did you go through this? So it's kind of a social project, actually, but it's been really fun.
I love the title. It's a brilliant title. 90210. That's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
90210. Yeah, I wish I could take credit. But it is good. Yeah. So that's something I do in my very little spare time.
Absolutely. We will put that into the show notes and so forth. Jessica, I want to ask you, where can people reach out to you? What's the best way to contact you?
Honestly, LinkedIn. That's another thing
Great.
to tell all of these young aspiring music people. Get familiar with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yes, it's business Facebook, but you get to know the players. You get to look at companies. You get to learn names. Use it as a learning tool. It does have a lot of resources there.
Absolutely.
So LinkedIn is probably my easiest way to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Jessica, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This has been a wonderful, insightful, and great conversation, and we are both very grateful to you. We can't thank you enough.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored. Thank you for having me. I was honestly, just to tell you guys, I was really honored that you asked. So thank you.
What a great, insightful, interesting conversation from someone who's been on the front lines of a lot of the various areas of the business that have led her to be successful in this particular arena. I thought there were so many great points here, Eric, that were talked about. One in particular that I thought was really interesting that isn't talked about enough, and it's kind of an insider point, but that really I think will add a lot of value to people wanting to place music, was her whole point about seasonality in sync placements, that there are distinct seasons for sync. I mean, whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's back to school campaigns or whether it's, summer or, and understanding these cycles in positioning, songs and in pitching really is an effective kind of way to see how
I remember when we asked that question, because I think it was me that had brought up the point of like, is there times of the year that there's certain syncs? And it's a brilliant point that you're bringing, because for people out there that do have a wide catalog of different stuff that might fit those different seasons, that might be a way of you to kind of figure out, okay, I should be pitching maybe 3 months ahead of time or 6 months for the Super Bowl. I might have something that's Super Bowl related, or for Easter time, or during tax, there's all these different events that happen during the year. If you think about it, back to school is a big one. That's a big one for sync placements. So if you have anything that would fit those kind of things, it might be wise to maybe start reaching out at people during certain times of the year.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And I also felt that, sticking with the theme that I stuck with at the top of the show, which is always about the artist, she had a great point about advice for overcoming artist challenges. Jessica advises artists to embrace not just the music, but all aspects of the industry to overcome challenges and achieving success. And this is getting back to the whole thing with like saying yes. Obviously, you have to figure out if you can really do, sometimes you might be scared, but can you actually go through with it and say yes and do it? And that's something that you'll have to assess. But the challenges that artists face is something that's a big thing for any artist that's just starting out, or whatever level that they're at, is just overcoming and facing those challenges that people might be experiencing. And I think that that's a great point that she brings up about embracing, and not just about the music, but just about all areas of the industry. And that's why you've, Rich, have harped so much on people reading, Billboard, hits, digital music news, all the different areas, Hypebot, which is a big thing that you've talked about.
Yeah, because I believe, how do I put this? One of the things that I think is very, very true in the era that we live in today is that if you want to be a successful artist, you have to look at this as it is a career, but it's got to be a way of life. If you were to have this as a career, I'm not talking about like people that want to do part-time and, dress up and maybe do a show once or twice a year. But if it's to be your career, meaning this is where you're going to be making a living in music or in sync or in publishing, you've got to be educated about the world you're getting into. I don't mean that you have to have a PhD or that you have to know everything, but this has to be incorporated into your life. And I don't know anyone who's successful in the music business where that hasn't been the case. Remember, it's not just a career. It's a career and it's a life.
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at mubutv.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.